4,000 meters below the surface of the Pacific, roughly 200 nautical miles south-southwest of the Japanese coast, there is a locked safe. It has been there since the morning of November 29, 1944. No salvage team has ever reached it. No salvage team ever will. Inside that safe are the complete technical and operational secrets of the largest aircraft carrier the world had built to that point. A ship so classified that even its existence was, officially, a matter Japan was prepared to kill to protect. The safe will stay where it is. The secrets will stay inside it. 3 facts, then. The carrier it came from was commissioned 10 days before it sank. It never launched a single aircraft. It never fired its guns in anger. The record it left behind. The largest warship ever destroyed by a submarine. That record has stood for over 80 years. Nothing in any Navy sailing today is remotely close to threatening it. This could be told as a story about a great ship meeting a worthy adversary. The Colossus and the Hunter, power meeting power in the dark waters of the Pacific. It is not that story, because the submarine that sank her was not on a combat patrol. She was assigned to lifeguard duty, standing by to rescue pilots from a bombing raid that was cancelled that afternoon. And the commander who ordered the attack had, 14 months earlier, located a Japanese aircraft carrier, declined to press his attack, and submitted a written request to be removed from command. That is the story. It begins at Midway, June 1942. 4 days in the Central Pacific that shattered Japan's strategic confidence and set everything that follows in motion. At the outset of the battle, the Imperial Japanese Navy fields 4 of its finest fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu. By the time it ends, all 4 are at the bottom of the Pacific. In 2 days of fighting, Japan loses not just ships, but the core of what made those ships dangerous. Years of trained aviators, irreplaceable crew, institutional knowledge built up across a decade. Tonnage can be replaced. That cannot. The blow to Japanese strategic reach is immediate. For 2 years, the Imperial Japanese Navy had extended itself across the Pacific, with those carriers as its fist. Now the fist is gone. And in the American yards, ships are building faster than Japan can count them. Among the officers watching this from a destroyer bridge is a career naval officer named Toshio Abe. He commands a destroyer division in the battle, and when the carrier Hiryu is mortally struck by American dive bombers, it is Abe's ships that come alongside to fight the fires. His flagship stands close to the burning hull. He sends his firefighters to the carrier's crew. And when it becomes clear the Hiryu cannot be saved, Abe boards her personally to find the 2 men in command and convince them to live. Admiral Yamaguchi and Captain Kaku listen to him. They decline. They will go down with their ship. Abe loved life. He thought it too precious to be thrown away in ceremony. He could not understand the decision. He returned to his destroyer. Then he is ordered to torpedo the Hiryu, to prevent her from falling into American hands. He obeys. He watches his own torpedoes tear into the dying carrier, knowing the 2 officers are still on the bridge. He carries that with him. And in the months that follow, back in Japan with the survivors of Midway, the Navy begins looking for answers. The answer they fix on is sitting in a fortified dry dock at the Yokosuka Naval Arsenal, the 3rd hull of the Yamato class, a battleship whose keel was laid in May 1940, now sitting at 45% complete. With the carriers gone, they will convert it. They will build something the enemy cannot ignore and cannot easily kill. They are wrong about the second part, but it will take 2 more years for that to become clear. The conversion debate that follows is a study in institutional paralysis. Naval factions argue over what the ship should be, a full fleet carrier or a floating supply platform supporting other carriers with spare parts, fuel, and reserve aircraft. Neither side fully wins. What emerges from the compromise is something that serves neither purpose particularly well. Shinano, they give her that name, will be fitted as a support carrier. Her primary function is not to project air power. It is to sustain it. What she will project instead is armor. 75 millimeters of hardened steel plate. The flight deck. Below the waterline, the hull is wrapped in armored anti-torpedo bulges. The main belt at the waterline runs 8 inches thick. High-speed armored elevators run bombs and torpedoes directly to the flight deck. In the spaces between her aviation fuel tanks and their cofferdam, the Navy has poured 2,400 metric tons of concrete, a lesson drawn from the loss of Taiho, which had destroyed herself with her own fuel vapor. Shinano will not make that mistake. On paper, she is designed to survive perhaps 20 torpedo hits. Yamato and Musashi, themselves considered effectively unsinkable, each absorbed 12 torpedoes before they went down. By every engineering calculation available to the Imperial Japanese Navy, Shinano cannot be sunk by anything the Americans are likely to bring against her. Captain Kitaro Matsumoto, one of the men who helped design the Yamato hull she was converted from, will later call her a very strange-looking compromise indeed. There is more to his verdict. It belongs later in this story. The secrecy around construction is total. A tall fence goes up on 3 sides of the graving dock at Yokosuka. Workers are confined to the yard. The penalty for disclosing the ship's existence, even in outline, is death. No photographs are taken during construction. Shinano is the only major warship built in the 20th century for which no construction photographs exist. 3 images in total capture her existence. 1 from a Japanese reconnaissance aircraft checking camouflage, 1 from an American B-29 at altitude, 1 from a civilian photographer on a harbor tug. The secrecy that was meant to protect her will become, in the end, part of what destroys her. There is another problem, quieter and closer to the waterline. Shinano's newly assigned medical officer, Lieutenant Commander Takamasa Yasuma, files his assessment of the crew before departure. He has seen the Imperial Japanese Navy at the beginning of the war. The trained men, the veterans, the professionalism. What he sees aboard this ship is something different. Many of the Shinano crew, he writes, are rather inferior in skills and morale. I can't help feeling a sense of apprehension as to how they will demonstrate their ability in the event of a fierce battle. That report goes into a file. The admirals make no changes to the departure schedule. On the other side of the Pacific, in the late summer of 1944, a 34-year-old Navy commander named Joseph Enright is given a second chance he has no right to expect. To understand what that means, you have to go back a year. Enright graduated from the Naval Academy in 1933. His academy records describe a cheerful personality, a passion for organizing, an athlete. He spent 3 years on a battleship, qualified as a submariner, worked his way through the ranks. By July 1943, he has command of a new fleet submarine, USS Dace, and his first war patrol is ahead of him. 49 days. No results. The specific failure arrives on November 15th, 1943. An intelligence intercept positions him to intercept the Japanese fleet carrier Shokaku. He finds her. He makes what he later describes as a timid approach and abandons the effort as daylight comes. The Shokaku sails on. Enright returns to port. What he does next is unusual. He puts the blame on the record in his own words. I was responsible for an unproductive patrol, he writes, and requests to be relieved by an officer who can perform more satisfactorily. Admiral Lockwood grants the request. Enright is given administrative duties at the submarine base on Midway. Half a year on an island, processing logistics, while the Pacific War moves forward without him. In June 1944, USS Kavala finds the Shokaku during the Battle of the Philippine Sea. The carrier Enright walked away from. Kavala sinks her. Enright is still at Midway when it happens. He eventually requests a second command. The Navy gives him USS Archerfish, SS-311, a Balao-class fleet submarine commissioned September 1943. She has no confirmed kills. Her first patrol, 3 engagements, no sinkings. Her second patrol, no contacts at all. Her fourth patrol, 53 days in Japanese home waters, nothing. A submarine with no kills, a commander with a written record of failure. In October 1944, Archerfish sails on her 5th patrol. Her primary mission is lifeguard duty, standing by off the Japanese coast to recover downed pilots from scheduled B-29 raids on Tokyo. It is important work. It is not the kind of work that changes history. On November 19th, a B-29 on a reconnaissance flight over Yokosuka captures an image of a massive ship near the harbor entrance. The Navy General Staff looks at the photograph and issues an order. Shinano is to depart for Kure no later than November 28th. Her captain, Toshio Abe, the same officer who boarded the dying Hiryu at Midway and fired the torpedoes that ended her, knows what a warship looks like when she's not ready. He objects. The watertight doors are not installed. The fire suppression systems are still being fitted. Only half the engines are operational. The crew has had almost no time at sea. He asks for a delay. He asks at minimum for a daylight passage. A few more hours, a slightly smaller set of problems. The admirals deny the request. Air support cannot be arranged for a daylight transit. At 1800 on November the 28th, 1944, Shinano moves out of Tokyo Bay. The night is cool, a late autumn bite off the Pacific. Above the water, a near full moon lights the surface, good for Abe's lookouts and good for anyone watching from below. 3 destroyers escort her, Isokaze, Yukikaze, and Hamakaze. 2 of the 3 carry radar and sonar still damaged from Leyte Gulf, not yet repaired. Her cargo includes 6 Shinyo suicide boats, 50 Oka suicide flying bombs, and 2,175 crew, plus 340 shipyard workers and civilians, some still completing work that should have been finished months ago. Her orders are to reach Kure, complete fitting out, and carry her suicide craft south to the Philippines and Okinawa. At 20 knots, it is 16 hours of open water. Somewhere south of the Boso Peninsula, Archerfish is running on the surface. The bombing raid she was standing by for has been cancelled. She has nothing particular to do. The ocean is open. At 4:30, the moon will set. At 20:48, the radar operator on Archerfish picks up a contact. 12 miles out, bearing northwest. Enright looks at the readout and assumes a tanker. The contact is enormous, but big oilers move through these waters. Then visual contact opens at 21:40, and something that is not a tanker materializes out of the dark. He stares at it. The size is wrong for a tanker. He thinks of Yamato. Could this be Yamato? He is chasing something larger than Yamato. He does not know it yet. Nobody aboard does. There is nothing in his recognition charts large enough to match it. He turns Archerfish to a parallel course and begins the pursuit. On the bridge of Shinano, Abe is already aware. His lookouts detected the radar signature over an hour before Enright made contact. He knows something is out there. What he cannot know is that it is alone. Abe stands on the bridge and reasons through what he knows. There are reports of American submarine groups recently departing Saipan and Guam. Wolf packs, multiple boats working in coordination, using one submarine as a decoy to distract the escorts while the others maneuver into position. He turns to his navigator and says what he believes. No doubt he intends to act as a decoy at some point to lure away our screening destroyers. That accomplished, his comrades can approach Shinano unopposed. We must guard against any such ploy. It is sound reasoning. In many circumstances, it would be exactly right. Archerfish is alone. There is no wolf pack. there never was. Every decision Abe makes from this moment on is built on a map that does not exist. At 22:45, Shinano's lookouts spot archerfish on the surface. The destroyer Isokaze breaks formation, against orders, and moves toward the submarine. On Archerfish's conning tower, the Americans scramble. The destroyer is coming. Then something baffling happens. A bright red light blinks atop Shinano's main mast, and the destroyer slows, turns, heads back toward the carrier. Enright watches it go. No one aboard Archerfish understands why. On Shinano's bridge, the reason is clean and complete. Abe has ordered Isokaze recalled. Exactly as his wolf pack theory predicted, the submarine is acting as bait. Send the destroyer after it, and Shinano's flank opens to the pack. He will not fall for it. He orders his ships to turn away from Archerfish and rely on the margin of speed that should settle this. At 20 knots, Shinano outruns any American fleet submarine by 2 knots. The math is simple. At 23:22, the math collapses. A bearing on one of Shinano's propeller shafts overheats. The carrier slows to 18 knots to prevent shaft damage. Archerfish's maximum surface speed is 20.25 knots. The gap that was supposed to save her evaporates, not because of American firepower, not because of superior intelligence, because a mechanical component on an undertested ship fails in the dark. Enright checks his watch. The moon sets at 4:30. The chase narrows into something grinding and meticulous. The submarine tracks behind and to the side of the carrier, calculating angles, watching the clock. Every time Shinano changes course to evade the imaginary wolf pack, she crosses back through Archerfish's track. The evasive pattern designed to confuse a fleet of submarines keeps handing the lone submarine its geometry back. The hours move. Each one is a minute closer to moonset, to dawn, to the end of the window. It is 2:56. Enright raises his binoculars. The carrier is turning toward him. He doesn't wait. 8 minutes later, at 3:08, Archerfish is submerged, running perpendicular to the carrier's new course. Shinano turns south. Her entire starboard side opens to the submarine. At 3:17, at 1,400 yards, Enright fires all 6 forward torpedo tubes. He set them shallow, 10 feet. He wants hits high on the hull. He gets 4 of them. Through the periscope, he watches a fireball erupt near the bow. He hears the first impact carried through the water. He watches the second explosion tear the hull 8 seconds later. Then Archerfish goes down to 400 feet, below rated crush depth for most of her equipment, to ride out what comes next. For 47 minutes, the crew hears Shinano breaking apart above them. On the surface, it is not happening the way anyone expected. Abe has heard torpedo explosions before. He stands on the tilting bridge and issues his orders. Enemy torpedoes, gentlemen. Sound battle stations. All hands. Damage control status reports immediately. Casualties. Get to it. He is calm. He has reason to be calm. The ship was designed to survive this. 4 torpedoes should not be enough, but the deck is already listing 13 degrees to starboard, and somewhere below, the air is moving. The compartments were never tested for water tightness. The doors were never properly sealed. As seawater cascades through the torpedo wounds and drives the air before it, the executive officer hears it, rushing through the gaps in the watertight doors, through unsealed manholes in the double-bottomed hull, through joints that were flagged as poorly designed and never reinforced. The sound tells him, before any damage report arrives, that the ship is already lost. The first torpedo had destroyed refrigerated compartments and a fuel storage tank. The second flooded the outboard engine room. The third tore into the number 3 boiler room, killing every man on watch, then allowed the flooding to cascade into both adjacent boiler rooms. The fourth ruptured the starboard oil storage tank. and the torpedoes had struck precisely along the poorly designed joint between the waterline armor belt and the anti-torpedo bulge. The structural weakness baked into this hull by the architects of the Yamato class and never corrected. An I-beam dislodged by the blasts punched through into a boiler room wall. The armor the ship carried against bombs found itself useless against the threat that actually arrived. Abe orders speed maintained. He believes he can outrun the submarine, reach shallower water, be beached if necessary. What maintaining speed actually does is drive more water through the wounds with every knot. Counter-flooding corrects the list temporarily, from 13 degrees to 7. But the numbers are against him. Dawn comes. The starboard boiler room floods completely. The list climbs to 20 degrees. At 7:45, Shinano loses all power. At 8:50, Abe orders the destroyers to take her in tow toward Cape Ushio. The tow cables snap under the weight of a ship already too heavy when she was commissioned. On the bridge, someone has a task. The assistant damage control officer removes the Emperor's portrait from its place, wraps it carefully, and transfers it by line to the destroyer alongside. The 71,890-ton flagship of the Imperial Japanese Navy is dying in the morning light, and an officer is making certain a photograph is properly packaged. Protocol. Even now. Perhaps especially now. At 10:18, Abe orders Shinano abandoned. At 10:57, she capsizes. Her enormous rounded hull rolls out of the water, 4 massive bronze propellers turning in the air, lifting toward the morning sky. She stays that way for several minutes, upside down, immense, improbable, before the stern begins to slide. Then she is gone. The man who had boarded a dying carrier at Midway to beg 2 officers to live, who had fired the torpedoes that killed Hiryu with those officers still on the bridge, goes down with his ship. He is posthumously promoted to the rank he was slated to receive when the fitting out was complete. 1,435 men do not survive the morning. In the deep water beneath the sinking, Archerfish rides out the last of the depth charges and waits. When Enright eventually brings her up, he does not know what he has destroyed. He makes a sketch from memory, the silhouette he saw through the periscope, and submits it to Naval Intelligence when he returns to port. The Office of Naval Intelligence looks at the sketch and reaches its conclusion. Probably a cruiser. The size does not match anything on their lists. There are no carriers unaccounted for in those waters. Archerfish is eventually credited with sinking a 28,000-ton carrier. Half the truth, and even that is doubted in some quarters. What the Americans cannot know, because the records were classified by a dying empire and now rest in a locked safe at 4,000 meters, is that a captured Japanese aviator told U.S. Naval Intelligence in July 1943, 16 months before Shinano sailed, that a 3rd Yamato-class battleship was being converted into a carrier. The information was recorded, filed, not acted upon. The analysts believed they had accounted for all of Japan's surviving carriers. The intelligence did not fit the picture they had already drawn. The same blindness operated on both sides of the water. Japan, for its part, makes Shinano disappear a second time. All 1,080 survivors are quarantined on an island until January 1945. No announcement of the loss is made. The pre-surrender burning of the Imperial Naval Technical Bureau archives at Ofuna destroys most of what remained of the documentary record. The Navy that built the most powerful carrier in the world cannot acknowledge that it sank in 10 days without firing a weapon because there is nothing left to protect that is worth the acknowledgement. It is only after the war ends that the picture assembles itself. The identity confirmed. The tonnage corrected. Shinano, 71,890 tons. The largest aircraft carrier ever built. The largest warship ever sunk by a submarine. Enright is awarded the Navy Cross. His credit is corrected from 28,000 tons to the number that is actually true. After the war, Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz delivers the official verdict. It is fitting that an American submarine should climax the undersea campaign against Japanese warships by sending down the new queen of the Imperial Navy before she had an opportunity to come into action. On September 2nd, 1945, USS Archerfish accompanies USS Missouri into Tokyo Bay. She is one of 12 submarines given the honor of being present when Japan signs the instrument of surrender. Enright is there. The man who wrote his own professional death sentence in 1943, who spent half a year on Midway while someone else sank the carrier he walked away from, who fired 6 torpedoes in the dark at a shape he couldn't fully name. He is in Japanese waters when Japan surrenders. He lived to be 89. 4,000 meters below the surface, the safe is still there. All of Shinano's secrets undisturbed. The complete technical record of the largest aircraft carrier built up to that time, sealed in the deep because a dying empire needed the loss to have never happened. 1,435 men. A ship that consumed 6 years of construction, embodied the last strategic ambition of a failing empire, and was sent to sea 10 days after commissioning with open watertight doors, an undertrained crew, and the certain conviction of the men who ordered her out that she could not be sunk. Captain Kitaro Matsumoto, who helped design the hull she was converted from, said the rest of it after the war was over. A very strange-looking compromise, he called her. Ill-conceived and too hastily rushed to completion. In its very design, and certainly in the spirit with which it was constructed, were the seeds of Shinano's own destruction. The haste, the compromise, the watertight doors that were never installed, the wolf pack that did not exist, the captain who loved life and spent his last 7 hours watching it drain out of a ship he was never given a fair chance to save. Toshio Abe is still down there with the locked safe and the secrets no one will ever read. Joseph Enright went home.